IXL section AA.2, factor out a monomial. All right, this IXL is very important because we're going to start doing factoring today. And this is something that we're going to be using for the next several weeks, even after spring break, and for several different topics. So it's something very important and it's not difficult at all. Okay, so let me do a couple of easy examples to begin with. Factoring, the way I like to think about it is that it's basically the distributive property backwards. All right, so I'll show you what I mean. When you're factoring, that means you're taking out the greatest common factor in both of these terms. I'm looking at both terms and I'm saying what is the greatest common factor in both of them. Okay, so first let's look at the numbers involved. I have 10 and I have 6. Okay, so what are the factors of 6? All right. By the way, I'm gonna write them all out, but that's totally not necessary. All right, but the factors of 6. Let me write factors here. All right, you can multiply 1 times 6 to get 6, and you could also multiply 2 times 3 to get 6, and that's it. Those are the factors of 6. Now, how about the factors of 10? The factors of 10 are 1 times 10, and you could also multiply 2 times 5 to get 10. All right, like how I did that, how they're in order from least to greatest. Now, which is the greatest common factor of 6 and 10? It's the number 2. By the way, notice that they both have also the number 1 in common. All right, that'll come in handy later on when I show you that if they have no common factors, the greatest common factor is 1, because everything has 1 in common. 1 is a factor of every number or every variable. All right, but in this case, the greatest common factor of 6 and 10 is 2. All right, so that's what I'm going to take out, the 2. All right, and I'm going to have parentheses here. Okay, now what's the greatest common factor of m to the third power and m to the second power? All right, when it comes to variables, what you're going to do is choose the variable with the smallest exponent. So in this case, it's going to be m to the second power. All right, for this, I think it's easiest if you just wait and see my answer, and it'll make more sense when you see the answer. But let me say that one more time. Whenever you have a variable, the greatest common factor is the variable with the smallest exponent. That's what I'm going to take out. In this case, m to the second power. Okay, now that I took those out, I factored those out. Now ask yourself, 2m to the second power times what will give you 10m to the third power? Well, I know that 2 times 5 will give me 10, and m to the second power times m to the first power will give you m to the third power, because you add their exponents. Okay, now let's do the same thing with the second term. 2m to the second power times what will give you negative 6m to the second power? Well, 2 times what will give you negative 6? 2 times negative 3 will give you negative 6. And m squared times what will give you m squared? M squared times 1 will give you m squared. So times 1, I don't put the 1 here. Basically, 2m squared times negative 3 will give you negative 6m squared. And this is my factored answer. All right, we factored out the greatest common factor. And this is what I mean by the distributive property backwards. Okay, if I were to distribute the 2m squared to every term in here, I would get my original problem. All right, and by the way, that's how you would check if you did it right. Just mentally do the distributive property and make sure it gives you the original question. All right. And by the way, there's a lot of these that you got to go slow and focus because it's very easy to make a mistake. I made mistakes while I was doing this IXL just because I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. All right. All right. Let's look at the next one. Okay. So we got to factor out the greatest common factor of 9k to the third power plus 6k to the second power. All right, so first of all, let's look at the factors of 9 and 6. Ok, tengo que sacar el factor más grande que tienen en común el 9 y el 6. Así que déjame escribir los factores de 9 y 6. Hey, by the way, I'll say it again. I'm writing out the factors, but you should be able to do this mentally if you know your timetables. You should not be having to write out these factors unless you're somebody that does not know their timetables. And if that's you, I'm sure there's several people in the class like that. You need to learn them already. You're already in high school. If second and third graders know them and first graders, why don't you? Just take a few moments to memorize them. Okay? So the factors of 9 are, I could multiply 1 times 9 to get 9, and I could multiply 3 times 3 to get 9, and that's it. And the factors of 6 are, I could multiply 1 times 6 to get 6, and I could multiply 2 times 3 to get 6. So obviously the greatest common factor is 3, okay? El factor más grande que tienen en común el 9 y el 6 es el número 3. No deben tener que escribir esto. Yo lo estoy escribiendo para que todo el mundo me entienda, pero lo deben hacer en la mente. Si lo tienen que escribir para números tan fácil, eso quiere decir que no tienen la tabla de multiplicación memorizado. Y lo tienen que memorizar ya están en high school. Si no lo saben todavía, no sé qué están esperando, porque eso es algo que hasta en primer grado lo saben, o segundo grado. All right, so I'm going to take out the 3. Now, what did I say about the variables? When you're factoring out the greatest common factor of a variable, take out the variable with the smallest exponent, which is, in this case, k to the second power. Okay, cuando están factorizando un variable, saquen el variable que tiene el exponente más chiquito, en este caso k a la 2. Ahora me voy a preguntar, let me write this better, 3k. Ahora yo me voy a preguntar, 3k a la 2 se multiplica por cuánto para coger 9k a la 3. Sé que 3 por 3 me da 9, así que tengo que poner un 3 aquí. Y k a la 2 por k me da k a la 3, así que tengo que poner un k aquí porque se suman los exponentes. I know 3 times 3 is 9, and k squared times k to the first power gives me k to the third power because you add their exponents. All right, now do the same thing with the second term. 3 times what is 6? 3 times 2 is 6. And k squared times what is k squared? K squared times 1. So that's it. I'm done with that. Because when you multiply 3k squared times 2, it'll give me 6k squared. All right, so that's my factored answer. And again, always check. Don't ask me if you're right. Don't message me if you're right. If you want to check if you're right, multiply this. And it's got to give you the original problem. So there's no need to send me a message asking me, Mister, is this right? I don't want to get it wrong. No, multiply it. And if it gives you what the question is, then you did it right. You could check this on your own, okay? Así que en estos problemas no me deben mandar un mensaje preguntándome si lo tienen bien. Pueden chequear si están bien multiplicando la respuesta que cogieron. Si multiplican esta respuesta, te debe dar lo que tenía originalmente. All right, so let's do this last one over here. So 20 and 15. Again, mental math, it should be obvious that the greatest common factor is 5. That's the greatest common factor of 15 and 20. And d to the third power and d to the second power, the greatest common factor is d to the second power. All right, now put parentheses and ask yourself, I'm going to do it all together now. 5d squared times what will give you 20d to the third power? It'll be 4d, because 5 times 4 is 20, and d squared times d to the first power is d to the third power. Now, 5d squared times what will give you 15d squared times negative 3? Because 5d squared times negative 3 is negative 15d squared. And that's my answer. Anybody that does not see this, I'll bet you anything it's that you don't know your timetables. And I mean know them like the back of your hand, that you can answer them in like 2 seconds. So if you're not seeing it, that's the problem. You need to memorize your timetables. All right. Here's some more. These are still easy, and then we'll get to some harder ones in a second, all right? So up here, it should be obvious. The greatest common factor is 4x to the second power. All right, now I ask myself 4x squared times what is 4x to the third power? I need to multiply that times an x so that I'll have 4x to the third power. And then 4x squared times what will give you negative 16x squared. I need to multiply it by negative 4 because 4x squared times negative 4 is negative 16 x to the second power. All right, down here, the greatest common factor of 4 and 10 is 2. And the greatest common factor of a to the third power and a to the second power is a to the second power. Again, I said just get the variable that has the smallest exponent. Okay, now I put parentheses and I imagine what do I gotta multiply by to get what's here? 2a squared times 2a will give me 4a to the third power. And 2a squared times 5 will give me 10a to the second power. Okay, let me do this one in Spanish. El factor más grande en común que tiene el 10 y el 5 sería 5. Y de la n a la 3 y n a la 2 tengo que coger el que tiene el exponente más chiquito que sería n a la 2. Ahora pongo paréntesis y me pregunto, 5n a la 2 por cuánto me daría 10n a la 3. Tengo que multiplicar el 5 por 2 y n a la 2 por n para que me dé n a la 3, porque sumo los exponentes. Y 5n a la 2 por cuánto me da negativo 5n a la 2. Lo tengo que multiplicar por negativo 1 para que me dé negativo 5n a la 2. I gotta multiply 5n squared by negative 1 in order to get negative 5n squared. All right, moving on. All right, here I got examples. These you should pay attention to. These do not have a greatest common factor. Or let me say that better. The greatest common factor that they have is 1. So when that's the situation, like they don't have a greatest common factor other than 1, then the answer is you just write it the same because you cannot factor that any further. That would be my answer. Same thing down here. This would be my answer. Okay, let's talk about y a second. Let's look at it more in detail in case anybody doesn't get it, right? Let's look at this one. First of all, the 11 and the 7. What are the factors of 11? Let me write factors. The factors of 11 are 1 times 11. That's it. And the factors of 7 are 1 times 7. That's it. So the greatest common factor of those two numbers is 1. Look what it says there. And also remember that I said that for the variable, you take out the variable with the smallest exponent. So hold on, I'm thinking about something. I thought it just hit me an explanation I could say, but I don't know if it'll confuse anybody. Okay, but I would say this: since this does not have the letter F, then the letter F is not a factor of 7. All right, we have 11F and we have 7. So if this does not have the letter F, the variable F, then it's not a factor of this term, so I cannot take it out. I was thinking of a different explanation but now that I think about it, let me not say it because I think it'll just confuse people. Anyways, so they do not have a greatest common factor, only the number 1. All right, so then the answer is just going to be the same thing. Same thing here, okay? En estos dos problemas no tienen un factor en común, solamente el número 1. Y cuando eso es el caso, la respuesta es simplemente escriben la misma expresión porque no se puede factorizar. ¿Okay? No se puede factorizar esta expresión, así que ya está lo más factorizado posible. All right? I cannot simplify this any further. I cannot factor it. So therefore, the answer is just the same expression because we cannot factor it any further than it already is. All right, moving on. So if you get that, don't be surprised. You're going to have some like that on the IXL. All right, let's move on. Okay, now here I have some that I don't know. To me, I was picturing that some of you guys may get some of these wrong. So let's just look at them. All right, they're not really difficult. They could fool you. All right, so on this top one, the greatest common factor of 9 and 3 is the number 3. And since this term does not have the letter V, I cannot factor out the variable V, all right? So now I just ask myself, 3 times what is 9V? 3 times 3V is 9V. And 3 times what is 3? 3 times 1 is 3. So look at my answer. Again, this is one, it's simple, but I could just imagine some of you getting confused by it. For some reason, it just looks to me like something that would confuse some of you. All right. Seeing the answer should allow you to understand why it works, okay? And get the hang of it, I hope. All right, let's look at the next one. The greatest common factor of 20 and 8 is the number 4. Because 4 times 5 is 20 and 4 times 2 is 8. And the greatest common factor of b to the third power and b to the second power is b to the second power. Now I put my parentheses and ask myself, 4b squared times what is 20b to the third power? You got to multiply it times 5b, because 4 times 5 is 20, and b squared times b is b to the third power. And 4b squared times what is 8b squared? I need to multiply it times 2 in order to get 8b to the second power. Okay, and then here, all right, the greatest common factor of 5 and 5 is 5. And the greatest common factor of b to the second power and b to the first power is b to the first power. Okay, now 5b times what is 5b to the second power? I need another b in order to get b to the second power. And then 5b times what is 5b? You got to multiply it times 1 in order to get 5b. Okay, now we got 2 more somewhat easy ones, and then we'll get to like the ones that are in the challenge zone, all right? Okay, so on these, all right, I got 12 and 42. Listen, if you're ever not sure of what the greatest common factor is, then do my little technique. Again, you should be able to figure it out mental math, but in case you're having trouble, you could just do this. Okay, now how do I get them to come out in order from least to greatest? Easy. What I'm doing mentally is I'm starting with the number 1, and I ask myself, 1 times what is 12? 1 times 12. All right, now let's go to the number 2. And I ask myself, 2 times what is 12? 2 times 6. And by the way, look how I'm writing them so that they're going from least. Here they're going from least to greatest, and here they're going from greatest to least. All right, now 3. 3 times what is 12? 3 times 4 is 12. And then 4. Oh, wait, 4 is already here. That's it. I'm done. All right, so that's a little process that I'm doing. Let me do it with 42. But with 42, I'm going to say them in Spanish. All right, but it's going to be the same procedure, okay? Así que si no saben qué es el factor más grande en común, pueden hacer este proceso que yo estoy haciendo. Miren cómo yo lo hago para poner los factores en orden desde el más pequeño hasta el más grande. Empiezo con 1 y me pregunto, 1 por cuánto es 42. 1 por 42. Escribo el 42 aquí y dejo este espacio en el medio. Ahora 2. 2 por cuánto me da 42. Si divide el 42 por 2, te da 21. Así que 2 por 21 me da 42. Ahora 3. 3 por cuánto me da 42. Divide 42 por 3 y eso te dice 3 por cuánto te da 42. Divide 42 by 3 and that'll tell you 3 times what is 42. It's 14. 3 por 14. All right, now 4. 4 times what is 42? 4 times nothing. That doesn't work. 5. 5 times what is 42? Doesn't work. 6. 6 times what is 42? That works. 6 times 7. 7. 7 times what? Oh, that's already here. That's it. I've reached the end of the line. Those are all the factors. All right. Now I can look at this and see what's the greatest common factor. 6. Okay. Ahora puedo mirar que el factor más grande que tienen en común es el número 6. So I take that out. 6. And for the x, the greatest common factor of x to the 5th power and x to the 3rd power is x to the 3rd power. Now put the parentheses and let's pretend we're doing the distributive property. 6x to the 3rd power times what will give me 12x to the 5th power. I need to multiply 6 times 2 to get 12, and I need to multiply x to the 3rd power times x to the 2nd power to get x to the 5th power. Okay, now the same thing with the second term. 6 times what is negative 42? 6 times negative 7 is negative 42. And x to the 3rd power times what is x to the 3rd power times 1, so I don't write that one. And that's it. That's my answer. If you're in doubt, just multiply them and you'll see that you get the same thing that was in the question. All right? Okay, let's look at this one here. 16 and 4, the greatest common factor is obviously 4. And I'm sorry, for the k's, k to the fifth power and k to the second power, again, always take out the variable with the smallest exponent. Now I put the parentheses. 4k to the second power times what will give me 16k to the fifth power. I got to multiply it times 4k to the third power. And 4k to the second power times what will give me 4k to the second power? Times 1. And that's my answer. All right, now these are the types of questions that you're going to get in the challenge zone where you got several terms. Here we got a trinomial. All right, so same process, okay? Aquí son las preguntas que salen al final. All right, so 16, 8, and 8. What's the greatest common factor? 8. And f to the 10th power, f to the 9th power, f to the 8th power. What's the greatest common factor? The one with the smallest exponent, f to the 8th power. Okay? Saqué la f con el exponente más chiquito. All right, now I put the parentheses. 8f to the 8th power times what will give me 16f to the 10th power? 8 times 2 is 16. And f to the 8th power times f to the second power. 8 plus 2 will give me this 10 right here because I add the exponents. All right, over here, 8f to the 8th power times what will give me negative 8f to the 9th power. All right, I got to multiply it times negative f in order to get negative 8f to the 9th power. And the last one, 8f to the 8th power times what will give me 8f to the 8th power times 1. Okay, down here, the greatest common factor of 21, 28, and 7 is obviously 7. And the greatest common factor of n to the 7th, n to the 5th, and n to the first power is n to the first power. Now I put my parentheses. 7n times what will give me 21 n to the 7th power? 7n times 3n to the 6th power. 7n times what will give me 28n to the 5th power? Times 4n to the 4th power. And 7n times what will give me negative 7n times negative 1. And there's my answer. Is this easy or what? Come on, this is easy, guys. All right, we're almost done. I just got, I'm going to do 6 of these complicated examples and then I'll be done, all right? But let me try to speed it up because I'm sure this is getting boring by now. All right, so we got 6, 36, and 42. The greatest common factor is 6. Okay, now, I want to point out that here in the challenge zone, they're putting now 2 variables, not just 1 variable. All right, ahora en estos problemas tenemos 2 variables, no solamente un variable. All right, so the same concept. Look at the b's. All right, the smallest b is b to the 4th power, and the smallest c is c to the first power, okay? El mismo concepto, saco la b con el exponente más chiquito y la c con el exponente más chiquito. All right, now I put the parentheses. By the way, you don't write that one. So let me write that better. 6b. All right, so 6b to the 4th power, c times what? Will give you this times b to the 3rd and c to the 6th. So that the exponents will add up. All right, then times 6b to the 3rd, c to the 5th, because 6 times 6 is 36, and the exponents will add up. Then times negative 7, b to the 3rd, okay, and then times positive 7, c to the c to the 5th. On this one, even I got to double check to make sure I didn't make a mistake. Okay, b to the 7, c. Okay, so far so good. Yeah, that looks good. All right, so there's my answer. All right, let me go to the next one. All right, so on this one, 26, 4, 11. All right, so and this has an invisible one. Aquí hay un uno invisible. So look, the greatest common factor of the numbers is 1. So basically, I can't take anything out for the numbers, okay? Para el factor más grande que tienen en común estos números es el 1. Así que no puedo sacar ningún número. Así que simplemente voy a sacar los variables que puedo sacar. So for the k's, the smallest k is k to the ninth power. And for the m's, the smallest m is m to the second power. All right, now I ask myself, this times what will give me 26 k to the 10th m to the 5th times 26 k m to the 3rd. Then times negative 4 k m. Then times negative 11 m, and then times negative 1. All right? So hopefully if you're paying attention, that makes sense to you. Remember, when I multiply them, you add the exponents that have this of the variables that have the same bases. All right, and the last one. All right, so down here, again, there's no greatest common factor with the numbers other than 1. Actually, this one, there is no, now that I look at it, let me see. Yeah, this one has no greatest common factor, so the answer is just going to be the same thing, all right? Este no tiene un factor más grande en común, así que la respuesta, el único factor que tiene en común es el 1. Así que esto sería la respuesta. All right, the answer would be the same thing as the problem because the greatest common factor is 1. All right. Last 3 examples. So here the greatest common factor is 10 t to the, nope. I can't use t because these two don't have t. So the greatest common factor would be 10 u to the second power. So 10 u to the second power times t to the 5th power and u to the 8th power would give me 10t to the 5th power, u to the 10th power. All right, then times negative 4 u to the 8th power and times 3. All right, I'm pretty sure I have not made any mistakes, but I want to point out that it's a little hard for me to see this, especially like writing it over here. So I hope I haven't made any mistakes. Pretty sure everything's been right so far. I'm just double checking to make sure everything's right. Yeah. Okay. Then on to this one. 32, 32, and 8. The greatest common factor is 8. And that's it because this term does not have a v and this term does not have a u, so I cannot take out any of those. So 8 times 4 u squared v to the 10th. 8 times negative 4 u squared, and then 8 times negative 1, whoops, not negative 1, 8 times negative v 10th to the 10th power. That would be the answer. I'm pausing because I like to, like I said that you should distribute when you're done to check if you did it right. I like to do that myself because it's very easy to make a mistake. All right, yeah, so that's right. And this will be the last example. So 32, 8, and 8. The greatest common factor is 8. The third term does not have a c, but every single term has a b. So the smallest b is b squared. So that's what I'm going to take out. All right. So 8b squared times 4b to the 3rd power, c to the 4th power. 8b squared times b, c to the 7th. And 8b squared times 1. And that is my final answer once I've taken out the greatest common factor. All right. All right, guys, that concludes this lesson. Again, I want to highly encourage you to make sure you do this IXL and get it done on time. All right, because in the next upcoming classes, we're going to keep factoring and they're going to get more complicated. This is like the simplest factoring problem. All right. And I can't emphasize enough that this is going to be on your next district test, on the Algebra 1 EOC, on a bunch of stuff coming up. So this is really, really important, okay? Este IXL es muy importante, así que por favor háganlo en tiempo, porque los próximos IXLs van a estar usando esto. Estos son los problemas más fáciles de factorizar. Y también todos los próximos exámenes van a tener esto, así que es muy importante que lo hagan. Alright guys, so that's it for today. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next class. Take care.